I had exactly $47 in my wallet, a paperback I'd been carrying around for 3 weeks without opening, and one umbrella that had seen better days. The metal tip was slightly bent. The third spoke from the left made a soft clicking sound when you pushed it open. The fabric had a small patch near the handle where the seam had quietly given up on itself. It was not a beautiful object, but on a Tuesday evening in March when the Portland sky opened without any real warning, that old umbrella felt like the most important thing I owned. Then I saw her. She was standing under the narrow canvas awning of a dry cleaning shop on 5th, her coat already dark at the shoulders where the rain had caught her before she found cover. Her arms were folded in front of her like she was holding herself together against the cold. She wasn't looking at anyone passing by. She was just staring out at the rain with the quiet, patient expression of someone who had decided to wait it out, even though it showed no intention of stopping. I walked past her. I made it maybe 15 steps before I stopped. I turned around. I don't know why. I've tried many times since that evening to trace some clean, logical thread back to the moment of decision, and I never can. Something about the way she stood there, not panicking, not crying, just quietly enduring something that hadn't asked her permission, something about that made me turn around before I had time to talk myself out of it. I walked back and held the umbrella out to her without saying anything first, just held it out. She looked at it, then she looked at me. Her eyes were that particular gray-green color the sky sometimes turns right before rain starts, the shade that looks almost silver when light moves through it sideways. "I can't take your umbrella," she said. "You're getting wet," I told her. "So will you." "I don't mind the rain." She looked at the umbrella the way you look at something you want but aren't sure you're allowed to have. Then she took it. Our fingers didn't touch when she did. I noticed that, and I noticed that I'd noticed it, which told me something about the state I was already in before I had any real reason to be in it. "Thank you," she said. I nodded. I turned and walked back into the rain. It hit me within the first 10 steps, cold and immediate, soaking through the collar of my jacket in under a minute. I kept walking because I had a system, and the system said to go home and make dinner and read whatever manuscript I'd brought home in my bag. I made it maybe 30 feet. "Hey," I turned around. She was standing under my umbrella with the rain falling in a soft curtain all around her, and she was smiling. A restrained smile, the kind that happens when something catches you off guard and you're not entirely sure you want to let it show. "If you walk me home," she said, "the umbrella won't get wet." I stood there for a second, trying to understand that. "The umbrella," she added, tilting her head slightly. "If you come with me, it stays dry. Seems fair." I looked at her. I looked at the rain. I looked back at her. "How far?" I asked. 8 blocks, she said. 9 if I take the long way. I walked back to her. She tilted the umbrella so it covered us both, which meant standing close, shoulder almost touching shoulder, close enough to catch something warm underneath all that cold rain. Cedar, maybe, or dried flowers. Something that smelled like something cared for. I still can't settle on the right word for it, and I'm not sure I want to. "I'm Claire," she said as we started walking. "Owen," I told her. She nodded once, slowly, like she was filing it away somewhere she could find it later, and we walked. The rain kept falling. I didn't know yet that those 8 blocks were going to rearrange my life. I didn't know that a bent-tipped umbrella with a clicking third spoke was going to become something I'd never be able to throw away. I didn't know any of it. But let me take you back a little further, because you need to understand who I was before that Tuesday in March. You need to understand why a man who turned around in the rain felt, for the first time in 6 months, like he was exactly where he was supposed to be. My name is Owen Clark, I'm 29 years old, and I work as a copy editor for a small independent press in Portland, Oregon. It's not a job that makes for exciting dinner conversation. I read manuscripts, I catch mistakes. I argue quietly with authors about the difference between that and which and whether their protagonist's voice has drifted from Chapter 3 to Chapter 7. I live in a 1-bedroom apartment on the 3rd floor of an old building that smells permanently like the neighbor's cooking and sounds permanently like someone below me is rearranging heavy furniture. My commute is 11 minutes on foot. My grocery list almost never changes week to week. My life is, in every measurable way, consistent. I am not, by temperament, a person who acts on impulse. I have a system for most things. The order in which I make coffee in the morning, the route I take to work, the way I arrange books by rough thematic sections rather than alphabetically because I once read that the brain likes to browse rather than search. I trust my systems because systems ask nothing extra of you. They don't change without warning. They don't require more than you can give on a Tuesday evening when you're tired from a long day of catching other people's errors and you just want to get home before the rain catches you. The rain caught me anyway, and you already know what happened, but you need to know about the 6 months before that evening, because they shaped the person who turned around, and the person who turned around is the whole point of this story. For most of those 6 months, I had been in the slow, undramatic process of recovering from the end of something. No one left anyone loudly. My girlfriend of 2 years, a woman named Sarah who was kind and organized and very certain about what she wanted, had sat down across from me at our kitchen table one Sunday morning and told me, without any cruelty, that she didn't think we were building toward the same thing. She wasn't wrong. We both knew it, in the way you know something you've been too polite or too tired to say out loud. She landed on it that Sunday morning, and I respected her for it, and I missed her in the particular way you miss something that was good but never quite right. The way you miss a place you love to visit but never quite felt at home in. After Sarah, I went quiet. Not dramatically, I kept going to work, meeting friends for dinner, attending the quarterly editorial meetings with my notebook and my opinions. But underneath all of that, I had gone careful. The kind of careful that disguises itself as peace of mind until you realize one day that it's actually just distance wearing a familiar coat. For 6 months, I had been very careful, and then I turned around in the rain and held out an umbrella to a stranger who looked like she was quietly negotiating with weather that had no interest in cooperating. Those 8 blocks with Claire were the strangest 8 blocks of my adult life. Not because anything dramatic happened. Exactly the opposite. We just walked, and the rain fell around us, and I kept noticing small things the way you notice small things when some part of you already understands that what's happening matters, even before you have any real evidence of why. She walked at a slightly uneven pace, faster, then slower, like she was following some internal rhythm rather than the pace of the street around us. She held the umbrella a little too high, so the edge of the canopy barely covered her shoulder on one side, and I had to duck slightly on mine. Her coat was dark wool, navy maybe, though in the rain it looked close to black. She had a canvas bag over her shoulder that made a soft, steady clinking sound with every step. Glass inside, or ceramic, something fragile being transported with care. "What's in the bag?" I asked. "Jam jars," she said. I waited. "I make jam," she added, as if this were the most natural thing in the world to say to a stranger you'd known for approximately 4 minutes. Blackberry mostly. Some apricot. Plum when I'm feeling ambitious. I didn't answer for a step or two. "You make jam," I said. "I'm a florist during business hours," she said. "After hours I make jam. Don't ask me why. I've been doing it since I was 14, and the reason has never gotten cleaner than the smell is good, and it gives your hands something to do. Something to do with your hands." I turned that over quietly as we walked. I understood that feeling more than I had words for right then. "I edit books," I said. "Fiction or non-fiction. Mostly fiction, some memoir, occasionally poetry, which I'm terrible at." "Why?" I read it too literally. I spend the whole poem trying to figure out what actually happened, instead of just letting it be what it is. She laughed, a short, surprised sound, the kind that gets out before you decide about it. I felt unreasonably pleased with myself for causing it. "I do the same thing with films," she said. "I watch the entire thing trying to understand the plot instead of just feeling whatever I'm supposed to feel." "Then we're broken in the same direction," I said. She glanced sideways at me. The rain made a soft, continuous sound on the umbrella canvas above us. "Maybe," she said. She pointed suddenly at a restaurant we were passing. Its windows steamed from the inside, warm orange light pressing through. "Have you been there?" "Once," I said. "The soup was good." "Everything that matters in March is a soup," she said. I looked at her. "That's a strange thing to say, is it?" She seemed to consider it. You give someone your umbrella in the rain, they ask you to walk them home. You talk about being broken the same way. I think we passed Strange about 4 blocks ago. She wasn't wrong. I laughed, and it surprised me, the easy sound of it, the way it came out without effort. We walked another block without speaking, and the silence had a different quality from most silences I'd known. Not empty, more like something full being held carefully between two people who hadn't quite figured out what it was yet. Her building was on a street 3 blocks from the river, an old brick 4-story with window boxes that were bare now but showed evidence of summer. A dry stem curled around the iron, a curl of dead vine. She stopped at the front door and turned to face me, and for one clear second I had the very specific thought that I should say something, should find some reason for this to continue past the moment she stepped inside. I had 8 blocks worth of her voice and that surprised laugh and the cedar and flowers smell that I still couldn't name precisely, and I was not ready for it to end. She held the umbrella out to me. I took it. "Thank you," she said, "for the company and the umbrella." "The company was your idea," I pointed out. The corners of her mouth moved. "It was. I'm not usually like that." "Like what?" "Like asking strangers to walk me home." She paused. "I'd say I don't know why I did it, but I think I actually do." "Why?" I asked. She looked at me for a moment, and there was more in the look than the look itself. "You turned around," she said simply. "Most people don't turn around." She opened the door and went inside. I stood on the wet sidewalk holding my slightly bent umbrella, listening to the sound of her footsteps going up the stairs inside, and I understood that I had stepped very close to something I didn't have a word for yet. I walked home. I forgot to open the umbrella for the first 2 full blocks. The rain soaked straight through to my shoulders, and I didn't notice until I was nearly at my front door. I didn't expect to see her again. That sounds like the beginning of something inevitable, and I suppose in a way it is, but not because the universe arranged it, only because 10 days later I went to the farmer's market on a Sunday morning, and she happened to be there, in a yellow jacket that made everyone around her look gray by comparison. She had her back to me, canvas bag over one shoulder, talking to the honey vendor with her hands. I recognized the bag instantly. I had about 4 seconds to make a decision. I walked over. She turned before I reached her, the way you sometimes sense someone approaching, and when she saw me, her expression did something I wanted to catalog. It opened, just briefly, before settling back into something more composed. But I caught the opening. I've thought about it many times since. "The umbrella man," she said. "Owen," I reminded her. "I know," she said. She held up a small jar. "Lavender honey. Do you use honey?" "In tea sometimes," I said. "You should have this one." She offered it to me like she'd already decided it was mine. I bought the honey. I bought a second jar because the vendor was watching, and it gave me 30 extra seconds standing next to Claire in her yellow jacket. We walked through the rest of the market together for an hour and a half without ever deciding to. We just kept moving in the same direction and talking, and eventually the time was gone. She told me about the flowers she was working with that week, early spring tulips, and the specific way the stem cut had to be made at a sharp angle in cold water or they wouldn't drink properly and would be dead by morning. I told her about the manuscript I'd been working through, a debut novel about a lighthouse keeper that was quietly devastating in a way I hadn't mentioned to the author yet because I was still determining whether devastating was the point or a miscalculation. "How do you tell the difference?" she asked. "Read it again," she said before I could answer. "If you feel the same way in the same place a second time, it's intentional." I looked at her. "That's actually useful advice." She shrugged. "I do it with recipes. If something tastes wrong twice in the same way, the recipe is the problem, not the cook." By the time we'd circled back to where we started, I had her number saved in my phone and plans to meet for coffee on Thursday. We didn't call it a date, but we both understood what it was, I think. We were just being careful with the word, the way you're careful with something new that you don't want to name too quickly in case naming it changes it. That Thursday she was already at the coffee shop when I arrived, 2 minutes early, holding a menu she didn't appear to be reading. She had changed out of her work clothes into something softer, a gray sweater, her hair down instead of tied back the way she wore it in what she called florist mode. She looked like herself, I thought, and then realized I had no real basis for that thought except that it felt true. We stayed 2 hours. I don't remember all of what we talked about, only the shape of it, the way she described standing over a pot of blackberry jam and why you couldn't walk away at a specific temperature, the way her whole face changed when she talked about something she cared about. When I walked her to her car afterward, she stopped at the door and said, without looking at me, "Same time next week?" "Same time," I said. Thursday coffee became a standing Thursday. Standing Thursdays became Sunday walks that started without any planning. One of us would text the other something low stakes on Sunday morning. "Have you tried the new place near the bridge? Do you want those pastries from the bakery on Morrison? What are you doing this afternoon?" And within 20 minutes we'd both be walking somewhere together, and within an hour we'd have talked through something that mattered. I started to know things about her. The way she held her coffee cup with both hands even when the coffee wasn't warm anymore. The quality of her thinking quiet, which was slower and more settled than her other silences, and recognizable once you knew what you were looking for. The small pale scar on her left wrist from a childhood bicycle accident she described as entirely her own fault and nowhere near as dramatic as it looked. The way she watched windows when she was in the middle of a thought, not looking at anything specific, just out. The fact that she never said anything she didn't mean even when meaning it cost her something. And the fact that she had grown up in Vermont, in a small town with apple trees in the backyard that were taller now than the house she'd grown up in. That she'd come to Portland at 22 and had never quite settled the question of whether she was staying or eventually going home. That last part I held on to. Didn't ask about. Just held. About 6 weeks in, on a Sunday that had turned warm without warning, we were sitting on a bench near the river with coffee going cold in our hands. She was talking about her mother's garden, the apple trees her parents had planted before she was born, the way the blossoms came in April alongside cold air, the smell of both things together. She was describing it the way you describe a place you carry inside you all the time. "Do you miss it?" I asked. She thought about it honestly, the way she thought about everything, without rushing toward the comfortable answer. "I miss the certainty of it," she said. "I knew every tree. I knew which step on the back porch creaked. I knew exactly where the 4 o'clock light landed in the kitchen." She paused. "Portland is beautiful, but I'm still learning it. And sometimes I don't know if I'm learning it because I want to stay, or just because I've been here long enough that leaving feels complicated." "What would make you want to stay?" I asked. She turned and looked at me. We were close enough on that bench that I could have reached over and touched her hand without really moving. I didn't. "Roots," she said quietly. "Something that belongs to me here. Something I'd miss if I left." She said it simply, the way she said most things, like a plain statement of fact, not a piece of the conversation I was supposed to do anything with. Or maybe she was completely aware of what those words were doing. That was the thing about Claire. I could rarely tell how much she calculated and how much was just her being exactly herself, which was more disarming than any strategy could have been. I didn't answer. She looked down at her coffee, noticed it had gone cold, and made a small face. "We should have ordered tea," she said. "Next time," I said. She smiled. Next time. 3 weeks after that Sunday, on a Tuesday evening in early May, she called me. We mostly texted. The phone calls were rare enough between us to carry a specific weight, the way rare things do. When I answered, there was a pause before she spoke. "I need to tell you something," she said. I waited. "My mom called this morning. A woman in my hometown has been running the same flower shop there for 40 years. She's retiring at the end of the year. She reached out to my mom asking if she knew anyone local, someone who understood the town, someone who'd take care of the place the way she had." Another pause. She asked about me, the apple trees, the 4 o'clock light, the step that creaked. "Are you interested?" I asked. "I don't know," she said. "I think I might be. Which is why I needed to tell you." I sat with that for a moment. Long enough to make sure I said the right thing rather than the easy thing, the careful thing, the thing designed to protect myself. "How long do you have to decide?" I asked. 3 weeks. 3 weeks. "Can I take you somewhere on Saturday?" I asked. "Where?" "Just say yes," I said. "I'll handle the rest." A pause. Then, Okay, I had found the nursery 2 weeks before that call, on a Saturday when I didn't have anywhere specific to be and ended up driving east without a clear plan. Not a garden center. A proper old nursery. 3 generations of the same family in the same location, with wooden signs and a greenhouse that smelled like earth and new growth and something green and alive that you couldn't identify more precisely than that. I'd walked through it slowly, talking to an old man named Gerald for the better part of an hour, and by the time I left I had a plan that felt either very right or completely excessive, and I still wasn't entirely sure which. Saturday morning came clear and cold, smelling of overnight rain. I picked Claire up at 8. She came downstairs in a green sweater with her canvas bag, asked where we were going. "You'll see," I said. When I parked in front of the wooden gate and the long rows of things growing behind it, she looked out the truck window for a moment. "A nursery," she said. "There's something I want to show you." Gerald was 74 years old and had been growing things at that property since before I was born. He shook my hand and looked at Claire the way certain older people look at younger ones when they understand a situation without having it explained to them. "She's the one?" he said to me. "She's the one," I said. Claire glanced between us. Gerald led us to the back corner of the property, past rows of fruit trees with the tight, dense buds of early spring, past lavender and rosemary and things I couldn't name, to where a small apple tree stood in a large ceramic pot. Its branches were still bare, but thick with the closed knots that would be blossoms inside of a week. "Cox's orange pippin," Gerald said, touching the pot with one large hand. "Heritage variety. Grown from a cutting 3 winters ago." He looked at the tree with the particular pride of someone who'd watched something grow from very small. "She's ready to go in the ground." I looked at Claire. She was looking at the tree. "You told me about the apple trees where you grew up," I said. "Planted the year you were born. Taller now than the house." I stopped, started again. "Whatever you decide, wherever you end up, I wanted you to have something here that was yours. Something that would grow whether you were watching it or not." She was very still. I kept going, because I'd thought about how to say this for a week and I needed to say it all the way through. "I'm not asking you to stay because of me. I want to be clear about that. This isn't me trying to make myself a reason. I just heard you say you needed roots. Something that belonged to you here. Something you'd miss if you left." I looked at the tree. "This is yours, wherever you decide to plant it." The silence that followed was the longest silence I have ever stood inside of. Then she said, very quietly, "Owen, I know I haven't said anything directly," I continued. "I'm always careful. I take a long time to say the thing I actually mean. I know that about myself. But I need you to know, before you make this decision, the past 2 months have felt different from anything I've felt in a long time. And the reason is you. If you go, that's your right and I'll respect it completely. But I would very much rather you stayed." She reached out and touched one of the bare branches of the apple tree. Traced it slowly with one fingertip, the way you touch something to confirm it's real. Then she turned around. Her eyes were full. Right at the edge of it. "You turned around again," she said. "What?" "In the rain," she said. "That first night. You turned around when you didn't have to." Her voice was very quiet now. "And you just did it again." I didn't say anything. "You have a habit," she said, "of coming back when most people would keep walking." "Only when something's worth it," I said. She made a sound that was somewhere between a breath and a laugh. She took one step closer, and then she was very close. Close enough that I could catch that cedar and dried flowers warmth again, close enough to see the faint freckles across her nose that the weeks of spring sun had brought out. She looked up at me. "I've been trying to figure out for weeks what it is about you," she said. "Did you figure it out?" I asked. "You're the first person I've met here," she said slowly, "who made Portland feel like somewhere I could actually belong. Not the city, you." She stopped, steadied herself. "The morning after you walked me home, I woke up thinking about that conversation, about being broken in the same direction, and I haven't stopped thinking about you since." I reached out and took her hand. Her fingers were cold the way they always were in the mornings. They curled around mine without hesitation. "Stay," I said. "Not for me, for you. But let me be the reason it's a little easier." She laughed, real and bright, startling a bird out of the rows nearby. "Yes," she said. "Okay, yes." I kissed her then, standing between those growing things with Gerald almost certainly watching from somewhere behind us and not caring at all. It tasted like cold morning air, and particular taste of something you've been careful about for a long time finally being allowed to just be what it is. We planted the apple tree in my backyard in April. I say backyard, I had access to a shared patch of ground behind my building, slightly weedy and a little sad, but real earth. I got permission from my landlord over 2 emails that were both mildly uncomfortable. Dug the hole myself on a Saturday morning, and Claire drove over with the tree in the back seat of her car and her hands already dirt-stained from the nursery. Gerald had given us careful instructions. We followed them exactly. Good compost, enough room for the roots to spread, deep watering at the start, and then patience. Let it find its own way. We stood looking at it afterward, both of us grass-stained and a little tired. This small bare tree standing in fresh earth in the corner of a neglected city backyard. "It doesn't look like much yet," she said. "It will," I said. "Give it until August." "Will it have apples?" "Not this year probably. Maybe next." She looked at me. "You're very patient about time." "I've been thinking about next year," I admitted, "since about 6 weeks into knowing you." She laughed. The surprised one, the laugh that escaped before she could decide about it, and leaned her shoulder against mine standing there in the April sun. The following Monday she called Vermont. She thanked the retiring florist for thinking of her, said she'd given it real and honest thought, and told her she was staying in Portland. She told me that evening over dinner at her kitchen table, with the jam jars lined up along the windowsill catching the last of the afternoon light, blackberry, apricot, and one labeled in her careful handwriting, "Plum, ambitious." "Were you scared?" I asked. "A little," she said, "of being wrong about things, about staying, about all of it." She looked at me across the table. "About you." She picked up her fork. "I don't like not knowing. I like certainty." "And now?" I asked. She looked at me in her kitchen, in her apartment near the river where new green shoots had come up in the window boxes, things she'd brought from the nursery, living things she was trying here. "Now I know," she said. "I have a system for most things. A route to work, an order for making coffee, books arranged on shelves by theme because the mind prefers to browse. I don't act on impulse. I'm careful. I take time with everything." But on a Tuesday evening in March, something in me turned around in the rain and held out an umbrella to a stranger who looked like she was waiting out something that had no intention of cooperating. I am grateful for that impulse every single day. The umbrella hangs on a hook by the front door of the house we moved into 2 years ago. The metal tip is still slightly bent. The third spoke still clicks when you open it. Claire pointed it out about a month into knowing each other, laughing, asking how long I'd been walking around Portland with a broken umbrella. I told her the truth. I'd been meaning to replace it for almost a year and kept forgetting. "Don't replace it," she said. "It's falling apart," I said. "It's the reason you turned around," she said. "It's my favorite thing you own." I stopped arguing. I asked her to marry me in October. At the farmer's market, in front of the honey stall where we'd run into each other that first Sunday after the rain. The lavender honey vendor, the same one, had become something of a standing Sunday morning for us both by then. I had no photographer hidden in the crowd, no speech prepared, no plan beyond the ring in my jacket pocket that I'd been carrying for 2 weeks waiting for the right moment. She was standing in her yellow coat, holding a jar of honey and laughing at something the vendor had said, and I looked at her standing there and I thought, this is it. This is the moment. There isn't a better one coming. She said yes before I finished asking. We got married the following June, in her mother's backyard in Vermont, under the apple trees that had been planted the year before she was born. The blossoms were long gone by June, but the leaves were full and the afternoon light came through them exactly the way she'd once described it to me on a Sunday bench near the river. Green and gold at the same time, the kind of light that only comes through something living. Her mother had set long wooden tables between the trees, and there were white flowers in old glass jars, and the smell of the grass in the afternoon heat, and somewhere near the back of the yard her father's old record player was running through a stack of things that her parents had been listening to since before either of us was born. Her mother cried during the vows. My mother cried at the reception. Claire held herself together until the part of my vows where I mentioned the umbrella, and then she didn't anymore. The apple tree in our backyard had its first apples last September. Small ones, slightly lopsided, the kind of first-year fruit that a tree produces almost tentatively, like it's testing what it's capable of. They tasted like autumn, not any particular autumn, but all of them at once, the slow kind. The kind with long, quiet evenings and something warm on the stove and the person you love moving around in the next room. Claire stood in the yard holding one of them for a long time, turning it in both hands, looking at it. "Next year they'll be better," I said. "I know," she said. "But this is the first one. I want to remember what the first one tastes like." She bit into it and held the other half out to me without asking. I ate it standing in our backyard on a September afternoon with my wife, with a bent umbrella on a hook just inside our front door, and a tree that had started as one impulsive act on a rainy Tuesday and grown into something I still don't have one clean word for. Some love stories start with everything already right. Perfect timing, no complications, both people free and ready and certain. Ours started with me handing a stranger my umbrella in the rain and being just barely smart enough to turn around when she called after me. She held the umbrella a little too high. She invented a reason to keep me walking beside her, and we both knew it was an invention and neither of us said so. She made jam because the smell was good and it gave her something to do with her hands. She stood in rain outside a dry cleaning shop and waited for something with the quiet patience of someone who had learned to wait, and then she looked at me like I might be worth waiting for. She was right about one thing. Standing outside her building on the night we met, I turned around. I will keep turning around for the rest of my life.